Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to this great candidate forum and opportunity to meet the Mancos School District candidates. This forum is going to be led by Chris Clements from KSJD. So please welcome Chris to the podium.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. As Todd here just said, my name is Chris Clements, and I am the news reporter at KSJD Community Radio in Cortez, and I've been asked to moderate this candidate forum. So I'm very pleased to be here with you all tonight. And tonight, we're going to be hearing from 4 of our school board candidates, actually 5. And on kind of a range of different topics. And this is kind of how it's going to work. Candidates have been given a set of questions, 10 questions, I think, ahead of time, and have had time to prepare. And in addition to those, candidates here today are also going to be asked questions by you, the audience. And directions on that are kind of just straightforward. Just head to the back there and fill out a piece of paper with your question, and you can just put it in the basket. And at the kind of towards the end of this forum, I'll break out the basket and start reading questions that you have come up with yourself. And this is obviously a nonpartisan school board and a nonpartisan election. So please do refrain from putting any questions in there related to candidates' political backgrounds, because I won't read them. So each candidate is going to have about 2 minutes for just the general kind of questions portion of this forum to respond. And kind of as far as timing goes, they'll each have, as I said, 2 minutes. And towards the 30-second mark, our volunteers here from the League of Women Voters will be holding up this handy little placard, this ping pong to indicate 30 seconds, and then 15 seconds, and then finally a bell ring at the end of the time. Just like that, that's how you know candidates will have no time left to answer that question. So I think that I should probably also mention that this is not a debate. This is just a forum. So the idea behind this is to let the public, the public, know about who these candidates are and give you a sense for who they might, what kind of representatives for the school board they might be. So please, no spoken questions from the audience. Not that I think you would do that, but we won't be, it's not going to be a free forum here tonight. And the questions I'm going to ask tonight are going to be pretty general. And I think we're going to start with just candidate introductions. So they'll each have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. And I think we'll head after that right into some of these questions that have been prepared. So as far as the order for these questions goes, we're going to do a seesaw motion here from one side to the other. I think that'll just be simplest. So we'll start with you. Is it Tim? Yes. And then we'll just kind of work over to you, Craig. And it'll be the same question for each of you. And obviously each have the same amount of time to respond. So I think with that, that should be just about everything. Towards the end of this forum, we will also have time again for kind of a wrap up by each candidate as well. And I'll explain that at that time. But yeah, I'm very happy to be with you here today. And I think the first question that we will start with, well, actually, just with the introductions, Tim, if you'd like to start, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Tim Hunter. I've been here in Mancos since 1994. I have a small construction company, and I've just been running the community. I've been on several local nonprofit boards over the years. I've been on the school board off and on for almost 18 years. And that's me. That's what I do. I'm an outdoor advocate. I live here for a lifestyle. Certainly not for money, but that's part of being here in this beautiful community. Being part of the school district is a big part of our community. So it's Mitchell. I've been a resident of Mancos since 1974. My folks moved this year from California, and I joined the school going into the 5th grade. I actually did graduate from high school in 1982. Started working around here. Met my wife Melody. We had 3 kids. They all went to school here. My dad, oddly enough, was actually on the school board for 8 years when I was in school, so I always got in trouble before I knew I was in trouble because he knew what I was doing before I did. I am a business owner. I'm part owner of a dealership in Cortez, in the Dodge dealership. We also have a used car dealership in Drake that we own. I've just been involved in the school district since 1974. And it's almost one way or another continuing. That's who I am.
My name is Adriana Steinmetz, and I'm a lot more accustomed to talking to littles and not adults. So come prepared, and it's funny using a microphone. I grew up in rural Maryland. I went to a county school there, and I was actually really failed by that school system. I went from a straight A student to a high school dropout. And in that time, not one of my teachers or counselors or anyone in the school community mentioned or cared about my slipping grades or my declining attendance. So I found my way to a community college and eventually to a 4-year university. And I sought to become a teacher to help remedy the system that failed me. I wanted to become the person that if only I'd had a teacher who had cared about or believed in me. So eventually I landed in Southwest Colorado almost a decade ago. And I started teaching at Cortez High School, where I taught for a number of years. I also worked on developing curriculum for our region for science. And I mentored other new teachers. And I found eventually that being a teacher was unsustainable as a career for me. So I moved on to a new job working as an education director. I miss my students dearly. In my new job, I do get to have my 2 passions together of teaching and also being outdoors. I have kind of centered my life around education from the time I set foot in kindergarten to today. And I'd like to continue to follow that passion to work to better our schools and our community through participating in the school board. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and thanks for everybody who is attending.
I am Craig Manoli. I'm a lifelong resident of the Four Corners and of this southwest corner of Colorado. I grew up in Cortez. I graduated from high school there. And I got a chance to experience what it's like to be a minority and see what the school system was like, dealing with border towns and racism and all that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed it. Growing up in this area really gave me a solid foundation that I found valuable moving throughout my life. I am a lifelong resident, but I can trace my lineage further back in this area, past my parents, my grandparents, great grandparents. Through oral histories, we are told that my family was actually in the Mancos Valley before Mancos was Mancos. So this is really a place that I see and feel as at home. I went away to college, did various things. I worked at Mesa Verde as a firefighter, but always came back to education. I graduated from Fort Lewis College, and I went to work at the middle school in Cortez as a paraprofessional working with ESL students. Then I did construction in the summer, and then I went back to being an ESL paraprofessional at the elementary school, and I really enjoyed teaching. So I went back to college to try to get my teaching certification, and that process didn't quite work out so well, but I did escape with another degree in Southwest Studies. I've always really enjoyed watching kids grow. And watching my kids prosper in this district has really been amazing to see. This community is amazing. They just the amount of heart and the way that everybody looks after each other is just something that makes me feel welcome. That I know is a very enriching and encouraging place. Currently, I work for Alpaca Raft, and I think it's probably one of my dream jobs. My life with a lot of purpose and time that I can have with my kids and my family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. Yeah, so I think just to start into some of these questions, obviously being a school board candidate in Mancos, it's a very specific role in the community here. And so I kind of think most people would like to know, just right off the bat, folks, just what motivates you to want to be a school board candidate, I think. So if we could just start with you, Craig, and we can just work around the same way.
I think the main thing about my drive to be a school board member is focused on representation. Regardless of what I can say or what I can do, I've already am a representation of a certain background. I'm a Native man, I am Diné, and I always get recognized for that. First and foremost, it's always something that is a conversation starter. And it's not an obstacle. I really take it on as being a part of who I am and how I identify myself. Being on the school board, I can use that ability to be a representative of that community that I come from and the community that I live in. I found that my life has always had a certain level of selfless service. I worked with kids almost all my life. I was a scoutmaster for a scout troop for almost a couple decades. I currently coach and mentor. I've just never really been away from it. One thing that's really given me a lot of view is having kids in my own district and seeing what their needs are, but mostly seeing how they're growing and how they're supported. And I really want to help continue that.
I also really feel very passionate about our community, and I am always seeking ways that I can serve my community. And this is something that I feel I have experience in and a valuable perspective with working with the school districts during my career. I want to give a voice to my community, which I often work very closely with, and I'm very passionate about continuing the educational foundation that we have already set in place and having it ready for my daughter to also come and attend the school here eventually, and continuing the work that is ongoing and supporting our students here beyond just.
My motivation for running for the school board is the love of the school. It is a phenomenal school, it has been ever since I've been involved in it. 10 years ago, I started my journey on the school board and was lucky enough or fortunate enough to be seated on the board and started trying to get an understanding of what I just got myself into. And I quickly realized that there was a lot deeper than I had ever realized of what went on to be a school board member and all the functions that the board does to make the school run. The school is a business and our business is educating the kids. And it's not just cut and dry. And it took me a while before I felt like I was really contributing to the board, because it took me a while to get a grasp around it. We started doing some great things when I was on the board. We did innovative status, which got us away from some of the state mandated stuff. We implemented a 4-day school week, which has been great. It actually increased our attendance with our teachers and our students, and our grades went up. Those are some really good things that we have started doing. And
2 years ago, I was forced off as term limits, and we still had a lot of work that needed to be done, and the board is continuing to run with that. And I want to be a part of continuing to do that and continuing to make this school district the best district in the Four Corners area, because it's the center of our community. It's with the best project that we've done. It's the showpiece of any school district in this area. We have the best educators, we have the best administration. And there's no reason why I wouldn't just pour my heart and soul back into this to make it successful. That's why I'm moving forward.
Motivation is kind of the same as what everybody else talked about. I really believe in service to our community and giving back to our community. And there's a little bit of self-service in there that I don't want to have idiots running the show when I get too old to be in charge of things. So I really want our kids to be well educated, to get the education they need to go on to do the things that they want to do in life. If they can take care of their own affairs, and to be able to go into college or go into the military, go into the trades, whatever they choose to do, we want to prepare our kids to do that. And our district has come a long ways in making that happen. And it's, like I said, the innovative status for based learning, all these things that have come to pass. It's just great for our community and great for our kids, and it shows. And that's what motivates me.
Well, excellent. I think at this point, we can move on to just sort of another general question just about what the important characteristics are that you folks think a school board member should have, or what you will bring to the table specifically as candidates. And if you'd like to start, Tim, that'd be great.
I think some of the characteristics of a good school board candidate is someone's willing to be out there to put themselves out in the public eye. Somebody that's willing to take the time, because it takes a lot of time. And the willingness to do the studying and to do the back research. It's a fairly complex job. I've been on the board on and off for a long time, and I still don't know everything's involved. But that's the main characteristic I think somebody needs to have. I think I've shown that to our community through my service work and through other boards and things that I've been on, that I have the dedication and will take the time to make it happen.
I believe some of the best characteristics of being board members, having an open mindset, being able to come in and listen to what the issues may be, being able to make a decision based on the information that you're given that works best for the district. I've been involved in a few decisions where I thought I was going to be voting one way, and after listening to fellow board members, maybe some of the community, maybe some of our administration or staff, got my eyes open to a different way of looking at things and changed the way I thought I was going to vote. So having the ability to have an open mind, being willing to serve our community in what's in the best interest of our district and our community, not so much what is in my best interest, because that's not sometimes the best answer. We're put here by you, the people, to make decisions when you're not there, or you're trusting that we will make the right decision. So I think having an open mind, to have the ability to make a decision based on the information and what's best for our students, faculty, and our community. And I have a lot of experience in that. I've got 37 years of public service between the fire department that I was served at Mancos here for 25 years, several boards that I've been on. Transparency is huge. We're dealing with public money. Every board that I've ever been on has been dealing with public money. I have no issues ever showing anybody what we're doing, talk about what we're doing, and moving things forward. 37 years of public service, and I've learned a lot over those years. So in my mind, that's what it takes to be a good explain.
I think first and foremost, it's important to highlight that a board is a team, and the ability to be able to work on a team and to work with people who may be approaching the table with different perspectives, different views, and different opinions on current issues, then compromise with and come to solutions that serve the community is the first and foremost important characteristic of a board member. I also want to highlight that there is already excellent foundation put into place, and serving on a board is more of a relay than it is a marathon. As a new board member, pick up where previous board members have left off and carry it on until the next people pick it up. So focusing on those goals that have already been set forth by the community, both in the strategic plan and through schools progress through that plan as it is, and being ready to carry that forth in a way that is seamless with the previous board's transition, I think is important. And lastly, I think understanding all the sides of current issues that schools are facing, students, administrators, staff, and being able to approach the table with understanding of those issues and what's going to serve the community best.
Some of the most important characteristics to me for being on the board is being able to listen to others. Not only just the people on the board, but the community as well. And I found that that's something that served me very well when I was on the town board, was being a person who didn't right off immediately come up with an answer or something to say just to fill, the dead air. It was you had to deliberate through and make very cogent decisions and represent the community that we're serving. I think an important part of the community that I'd like to focus on listening to are the actual students. Not just to say that I listen to what my kids are telling me about what they would like, what they need out of their classes. I try to make sure that I'm approachable and accessible to many of the students in the town. I have recently gotten into coaching for different things, like league, soccer, but just being able to be approached by a student and having them feel like they can trust and say what they feel. I think that's important. I think that's because I don't think the board, I don't represent the board just for myself, but I represent the community.
Something else I wanted to mention before we move on to this next question is I actually forgot to let you know that although we have 5 candidates running for these 3 seats, we have our 5th candidate actually not present with us today, if you can tell. So if you'd like, that candidate has written, I think, a response to a lot of these pre-formatted questions. And if you'd like a copy of that, we can pass that out. Or also, I think it's just going to be available in the back there for you. So yeah, this next question, I think I'd like to take it a bit off the script here. And also, by the way, candidates, just a general note, just if you could get your faces or your mouths just 3 to 4 inches from your mic, that'd be really helpful in making sure we can pick up all of your lovely voices. That's just a little audio tip from your local reporter. But anyways, I think I'd like to ask you all, starting with you, Craig, just how, because a school board, as you pointed out, Adriana, is a team, and working together with the superintendent is all part of this. I'd like to ask you all how you approach, or what your approach is to conflict resolution in terms of, having a candidate or another colleague who's maybe of a different mindset than you. So if you could just talk about that in this next question, that'd be excellent.
Well,
Yes.
All right. I think kind of just playing up and being approachable, and being able to be seen as one that can have a discussion. Background, really my favorite coursework in college was philosophy, and just learning how to have an argument. And it's not so much to say as having a fight, but having an argument where you can have a discussion and take the emotion out of it, and see what
actual meeting is. And I think in conflict resolution, that's very important. You need to meet the person where they're at, but you don't want to inflame them. So just in the different varieties of work and service that I've done in my lifetime, that's something that I found is very important. I've worked with children, I've worked with kids that were having emotional and mental issues and doing some recovery work with them. I've worked as a bouncer in the bar. Probably names are about the same thing. So the one thing that I do know is that one of their toughest people that you're going to encounter would be parents. Because that's where the honesty is if they're having any kind of negative emotion. There's a lot of truth behind it. So it's trying to figure your way through that.
That's, I would 100% agree with Craig. I also work with kids. I work with individuals from pre-K through college, well into retirement through my job. And it doesn't actually really change that much from in that range of ages as much as we would like to think that it does. And having taught in high school, I'd like to think that if I can resolve high schoolers and their wild emotions, that I think I can handle just about any situation that might arise. And primarily it is about removing my attachment, my emotions, and hearing where the other person is coming from genuinely, where the other sides of an issue are coming from, and detaching what, you know, our own issues are from the topic that is at hand, to find a common ground. And I do believe that every conflict has common ground to start from, that we can build from. And from there, ideally reach a solution or a resolution that works for everyone.
Conflict resolution, I think it is respect. Respect for the other person's opinion and the willingness to have dialogue between yourself and them, and asking them why they feel that way they do, or what information they have that maybe I don't have or the board doesn't have. And just the ability to have dialogue between opposing parties of why they have a feeling and why you have your feeling. And she's right. There is common ground there. And you don't have to be upset with someone because they have a different opinion than you, but you do have to have respect that they have a different opinion than you. And then a lot of times through conversation, usually you come out with the best decision if you talk about it long enough and find out what the root problem is. And I think that's the key, you know, when a controversial issue comes up, especially at the school board level, of being able to have a frank conversation and not being offended if somebody doesn't agree with you, and having the ability to make a decision based on what's best for the district. And stand by it, you know, even if maybe you don't agree with it at the end of the day, we are a board of 5. And if it's a decision that's voted on that maybe I don't agree with or didn't vote for, I will still respect that decision 100% because it's a board decision.
That's a well said. I would want to say, you know, open listening is one of the key things to starting out to resolve conflicts and having simple discussions, which is sorely lacking in our world these days. Because through simple discussion, that's when you find the common ground. The common ground is key to resolving these conflicts. And then being willing and open to make strategic compromise based on those discussions. Without that, without finding that common ground, without being willing to make some strategic compromise, we will not resolve conflict. But I've found through a lot of meetings, a lot of political meetings, a lot of other kinds of conflict areas, that as soon as you can find that common ground, and as soon as you're willing to listen, that you can make the strategic compromises that can resolve those conflicts.
And my next question, and again, starting with you, Tim, is just what do you as candidates see as the current challenges facing our community here in Mancos?
Is it community or the school?
Oh, facing the school, I apologize.
Well, as with districts all across the country, finances is like the number one issue in schools these days. Being able to compensate teachers adequately is one of the biggest concerns. Security is another issue that our district has taken great strides in providing security for our students. Those are, like I say, number one and number two. And curriculum, getting a curriculum together that the community can accept and that gives our kids solid educational foundation that they need. Those are the things that are I prioritized in the school.
I agree with Tim on a lot of that as well. Recruitment and retention of our staff and our administration. It's not healthy for us to have to replace somebody like Todd every couple of years because we can't keep them here because of finances. Teacher salary, it's ridiculous that you have to have a 4-year degree to be a teacher, and it's one of the lowest paid jobs you can get in this country. It's disgusting to me. One of my priorities is to get that more in line. A few years ago, I was at a CASB conference at a recruitment and retention class. And they said, well, if we could pay all of our teachers $60,000 a year, we wouldn't have a teacher problem. I said, you just answered the question. That's correct. You know, we have people that aren't being educators because they can't afford to be educators because our salary schedule is so poor for them that they'd rather go be an accountant or whatever the case may be so that they can make ends meet. And, you know, cost of living in Mancos when I went to that class was $48,000 a year. I think at the time we were starting first year teachers at 32,000. How do we expect somebody to live in our community and be a part of our community when we're that far below cost of living? So, you know, finances, it's a huge thing. Parent involvement, we got to be, you know, I know the board has been working on it, and when I was there for the first time to what they're doing today is trying to get more parents involved so that the kids feel better and they do better. And when the parents are involved, we have a lot more successful students. So those are a couple of my big hot topics of recruitment and retention, finances, and parent involvement.
As we had said before, and it's no surprise to anyone, of course, funding is the first and foremost primary issue that I think schools face. That drives, I think, most of the other issues, teacher turnover rate, student achievement, many of the things that we are often trying to address could be solved with creative funding. I think in addition to that, we also are still seeing learning and social loss from the pandemic. That's something that our school needs support for. That's an issue that we're going to be working through for some time. And I think lastly, Mancos, I think as Craig mentioned earlier, has a really great culture of support. And I still think there are individuals who are left out of that network of support that we need to address and find solutions for bullying, especially in the new online platforms that a lot of youth have access to, that is not in a place that's seen by adults or monitored. So I think that those three pieces are the most primary to me, which is funding and addressing pandemic costs, our school culture being inclusive to all individuals.
I would have to say that adequate compensation for teachers and staff is important. It shouldn't be minimal amount to just straight wash. Aside from that, it's something that having come from the family of educators, I know that teachers don't do it for the money. if there's a passion or something that drives them to be there every day, even hours and it, teachers taking the passion and just snuffing it out. That's really difficult. So I think one of the things that I would see as a big challenge for the Plainview School District is continuing to encourage that fire. They have resources that they need, not only just to continue the way of life, but to have the resources that they need so they can teach. They spend the most time with our children, and they need the resources to be able to, head off into dangers. I think that's something that's important. It's just
So my next question is just about the safety of students. I mean, what as you, or I suppose, what should our school district be doing to ensure the safety of our students and staff? And if you'd like to start, Craig, that'd be great.
The question is a great question. If it were based in a different community, it would be quite an ideal conversation. Now, I would have to say that in our community, it's more of a pragmatic thing. We, as Mancos, have instilled such a great community in which every child is seen by so many adults in the community. 4-day work week or 4-day school week. We have set up programs on Fridays so that all the kids have something that they can do and that they're being watched. There's community being built between adults and the youth, so they feel safe and protected. But even when they need to have difficult conversations, or if they're straying, there's someone that's always going to be watching out for them. We use that the community doesn't represent. So it's more of a safe environment. I think that's very, very important. That we as a community, as parents, adults, educators, we are providing an environment for the children of this community so they can thrive, so that they don't have to see that this town is someplace that they have to escape from, but they can come back and help them for sure. So I guess that's kind of what it is. Safety will fall underneath that, security, the environment that nurture without buy-in. And that's, as adults, we would have that buy-in as well. And see it.
I think when we talk about school safety, there's a lot of different things that might come to mind, and that's definitely changed over the last decades. And I think that it's important to realize that all of the issues that fall under the umbrella of school safety boil down, to me, to the social and emotional well-being of our students within our community. And I think that this is something that Mancos does well and has a continued plan in the strategic plan to continue to improve. And that is prioritizing prevention, prioritizing closing the mental or the gaps in the mental health services that are available to students, and incorporating social and emotional learning as a part of the curriculum at all levels, providing trauma-informed care training to staff, and really prioritizing creating a school climate that is supportive of every student and involves the community. I'm sure as many of you have seen at lunch, you can easily walk by Fahrenheit and there will be many students there. You try to get lunch at the Columbine during the school week, it will be a long wait because the students are out and a part of the community. And incorporating that community as part of the school culture, and having them, everyone supporting the social and emotional well-being of our students, I think is first and foremost priority that we should have when addressing school.
School safety, there's a lot of different avenues that are out there for that. The first one that comes to mind is how do we make sure that our teachers and our administration and our kiddos go home every night? When we did the best grant, one of the things that we did with the architect was make sure that we directed the kiddos in a certain area, got the buses off the street in the turnaround. We caught a lot of grief for having to cut down a tree, but we did it anyway. You know, and keep a disaster from happening. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind. In the past 10 years, when I've heard about a school incident that's happened, I dove in and studied why was the school targeted? What happened and why? And it's because they're easy targets. It doesn't matter if we have a school resource officer. It doesn't matter if we have armed staff. Because when you have a school resource officer, you have that. But what they all had in common was access. They had easy access to get into schools. And even Aztec, they did everything right, except for one thing. They didn't notice the odd student. But what they did was they locked all the doors when class started. The guy couldn't get in. The two students that unfortunately lost their lives was one was going to the restroom. Oddly enough, that's a fact of nature. The other was going to get something out of her car. Everybody else was behind the locked door. He couldn't get to them. And they have a clock in their head that's going off. And when they know they're out of time, they either kill themselves or they run. Security is huge that way. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of school security. I want our teachers, staff, and kiddos.
Schools are the safest place our kids can be in our society these days, and especially in our community. As we said before, we have community involvement with our kids all over the place. We have free range kids that go around and parents hear about things well before kids get home. What Blake said about the school and safety, we've instituted a lot of things at school, not allowing access. We're having discussions about a school resource officer these days. It comes down to other things too. There's the social emotional things. We have established MTS as this multi-tiered system of support for our students. And all of our teachers are going to informed learning so that they can work with kids, so that they can deal with the social emotional issues. That is a big part of our safety. And it's not just the physical attributes, but it's the mental attributes that we can put out there between our teachers and our staff. A really good job. There's not room for improvement, but we have put things in place that we're seeing a lot of great progress in bringing our kids together, making them feel safe within our school, and making parents feel safe and feel good about where their kids are going and how they're responding to these kinds of situations, whether it's bullying or whether it's just bad day at school and systems in place are trying to implement keeps those kids safe.
When I think I'm going to break the script again and ask another question that I just am curious about hearing each of you speak to. Starting with you, Tim, could you each of you just, and it doesn't need to be a long answer, but I'd like to hear just how important it is to each of you that as school board members, if elected, how important it would be to you to make sure that marginalized students from the LGBTQ plus community or students of color are protected in the Mancos school district.
Of course, that's an important thing to make all students feel safe, whether no matter what where they come from, whether it's race or gender or any of those things. And again, I think we've been working on that with our staff, with our coming forward learning. It's an important subject, and I think we have become more and more inclusive in the community as well, and which is probably a harder place to deal with that issue than within the school district itself. And as soon as we can, we'll be overcome that within our community as well as within our school. So it's a work in progress.
Any room for anybody to not respect everybody equally, regardless of race, gender, choices, whatever they want to call it. Everybody has the same right as the person sitting next to them, sitting in front of them. And to allow somebody to not give them that respect is unacceptable. And I think Tim is exactly right. You know, we're making strides. It's going to be a work in progress. There's a lot that has been learned over the last several years. There's still a lot more to be learned. And it is a work in progress, but everybody has to have the equal amount of respect. I don't care what you do on your own time in school, as long as you don't threaten, hurt anybody, it's respect. Treat everybody equally with respect. And at the end of the day, we'll be just.
Thank you. Adrian?
I think again, this fits really well into the culture building with the community. That I don't know the statistics off my head, but I know that we see this pattern again and again play out through our country, that individuals from those under-resourced, marginalized groups don't have the same opportunities awarded to them. They don't have the same supports offered to them, and often have a much higher rate of violence, self-harm, etc., which to me is a red flag that there is a gap. I don't know the statistics for our community, but I can say anecdotally that I have seen a much more welcoming environment in Mancos than in many of the surrounding area for some of those marginalized groups. I still think that we have growth in that area, and I would love to help contribute in creating that school culture that supports every student and every family within our community.
I think providing a safe place for marginalized students. It's huge. It's key. That the district is already taking steps to provide our services, people to support all students. But one thing that I can say from my personal experience is that it's really easy for a marginalized student to come and visit. And sometimes it's you can have the child sitting there trying to just because they didn't talk. Over the cracks. If there's not a problem that they speak of, then it doesn't exist. And then that's the first thing. It's like, how do you create safe enough to say something, to be able to feel supported, and you can access some services that they need. I think it's something that we have to, we all have to wear, and we all have to do what we want to. Just one to acknowledge these students as one problem. I think that's especially in the community of our size. Sometimes you want to go home. You still have those thoughts. And we should be thinking about the kids. We should be thinking about the community and the school. That's what it is. That's how we're going to do it.
At this point, I'll again start with you, Craig. If you could, each of you, talk about how should, I guess, a school board member, balance the needs of the district with the needs of the community, the needs of the public.
Balance really should come from the information they bring back to the board to discuss during the meeting. I think it's very important that the voice that you speak with in the board meeting is not solely the voice that you speak with in conversations. It's also something that represents that spoken to you that address the issue or the need. So a lot of that I think has to do with finding the time to have that deliberation. The balance is ongoing. I think it's something that you think about. You're going to have to take it home. That you think about it. Look at the opportunity. You have discussions. You seek out more information. You do research. It's. I think this is why. So I look at it more of a holistic thing. This is something that I enjoy. To take a viewpoint 30,000 foot level. See all its parts. And discuss that. That's vital. So the balance is more of just having that wide range. Action and discussion and issue.
Say that school boards help create programs, services, and opportunities that allow our students to grow and our community and nation to thrive. The rights and responsibilities do not flow from individual school board members. That authority comes from the board as a whole. And I think that's a really important distinction. No single individual has the authority to make decisions or take actions that will affect the operation of the school district. Boards are elected representatives of the community who represent the will of the family. And as such, it should be a continuing two-way street between that community and that board. A well-operating board also understands that they must work together in order to balance the students' needs as well as the cost to taxpayers.
Being on the board and having been 8 years of board meetings, sometimes we don't get a lot of participation. When everything seems to be going right, nobody shows up. Something seems to be going wrong, everybody's there. Sometimes I think there's a misunderstanding of what the people may want versus what the board is mandated to do by law, by statute. And sometimes it takes a good discussion between the board and the public of, well, I know you want this, but this is a reason why maybe we can't do that. And having a frank, open discussion and being able to let them know we can do this or we can't do that. This is why, or why not. And then come up with a good solution, because we are elected by the people to represent them. And like I say, a lot of times we'll sit in a board meeting and it'll be just the board and admin and that's it, because everything seems to be going fine and they maybe not understand what's going on underneath the whole situation. You might be talking about stuff that they hear parts of that they may not understand or agree with because they don't know everything. So having an open dialogue, I would love to go to every board meeting and have a full boardroom so that people knew what was going on and asking questions. I've never been in a board meeting the 8 years I was on the board when we had anybody from the public that didn't get an opportunity to voice their opinion or ask a question or make a statement. And it wasn't a debate session. It was, you had a statement to make and we take it under advisement and we take it seriously and we listen to you. Doesn't mean we're going to have a back and forth, but we do hear what you say when you're at a come to a board meeting. And I think that that's important.
And it's been said by everybody here, board is important, it's 5 members. And that's part of the beauty of being able to balance the community. People I listen to go out in the church and from my business associates is different than the other board members. So when we come together and we share those communications, we've heard again, like Blake says, if you can fire a football coach, can really get people to come to the school board meeting. So the communication, the balance has to come from our interpersonal relations within our community, and that's what we have by elected officials. Because we come from different backgrounds, and we have to get in there and we have those discussions, we have the civil discourse, we talk about things, and then look at the legalities of it as well. Like I said, there's some legal things that seems to go counter to what our community might want, but you can't go against the law in this kind of position. And as long as you're open and can explain that, sometimes smooths things out. But again, it's because we all have different backgrounds, and there's five board members. We have those discussions, and that's where we achieve the balance within our community.
At this point, I'd like to ask, this is a big one for us here in Mancos. I mean, I know that here in the Four Corners, we're all sort of geographically isolated out here. And I think people want to know what each of you see as the major issues facing a rural school district like this one. So starting with you, Tim.
Well, again, it comes back to that financing and teacher retention. In a rural district is particularly hard. A broad base, the population, that makes it difficult. And also in a rural district, we have some, like the last question, the balancing those community issues, because we have some disparate views within our community. So as a rural district, our voices are not heard as much as like Jeffco, the Denver School District. We have a local caucus within the Colorado Association of School Boards is getting better organized, is getting the rural voice out there. Out of the 167 school districts we have in the state, 103 or 125 are rural districts. But yet, the State Board of Education pretty much listens to Jeffco and Denver. Those kind of guys. So getting our voice heard is one of the biggest issues in the rural district.
Blake?
We've been down that road together a long time. I know exactly what you're saying. And he's exactly right. Finance is always going to be a huge thing for us, and we got to continue to work on that. And one of the things that I wrote down here was a big city influence. You know, you got Douglas County sitting up there that has over $1 billion budget, you know, versus what we have down here, which is much less than that. But when they go to the state school board, they get listened to. They have a legislative issue, they get listened to because they have $1 billion budget. That's a big school district. And so big city influence, you know, we got away from some of that. We were able to file and get granted our innovative status, which has helped us do a lot of things out of the realm, you know, for our recruitment retention. You don't have to hire necessarily licensed teacher. We can hire a highly qualified if that meets our needs. You know, for example, if we had an accounting class and there was somebody in the community that wanted to teach accounting, we can hire that person as a teacher because they're highly qualified. So, you know, it's a work in progress that the board has been doing for a number of years. And, you know, it's always going to be a work in progress, and it's always going to be a difficult subject for everybody. The state gets tired of hearing from local school boards and superintendents about finance. But when you, the people, start complaining to the people in Denver about finance, we can actually start getting somewhere.
Obviously, finances are an issue in all school districts. I think that in rural schools, I've seen a disproportionate access to not only funding, but resources in general. You know, as we know, a lot of funding for schools comes from property taxes, which is not a fair system, and it affects rural areas in a way that is really inequitable compared to more densely populated areas. I think in addition, as we've touched on, a lot of policymakers don't understand or listen to rural issues. You know, and I remember in our last governor election, it really opened my eyes when not a single one of them really, I felt like addressed our community and our rural part of the state. It really seemed like, of course, they're addressing their voter base, which is a populated area. So it feels a little bit like living in a rural community, we are invisible to policymakers, to the rest of the state, that we're not seen or awarded resources that we may need because we are more invisible to those who have the power to do so.
And Craig.
Yeah, I'd have to bring it home. No, I think it's something that we see, and it's everything, all the sources from the state, whether it be for transportation, for education, for healthcare. It is centrally located around the urban areas. Always been that way. But I think one thing that's important for us to really understand is that school district have taken whatever we can. Burnout teachers, think of the community. It's going to support everything we can to nurture the students, regardless of them. And I think it's something that it's our to our school district, we should be able to funds to do it. But there's a lot of legislation that's really going to come that's going to help alleviate some of the burdens that we see. And I think it's going to be something where this community have to be heads about these things and educate ourselves about some of the things that are.
So this is, I mean, obviously here in this region, we have to do a lot with less and handle sort of operating with not as much resources, again, as some of these other school districts around the state. So this question is about budgetary concerns. I mean, in the development of a budget, as candidates, what are your goals and objectives? What would guide your decision-making for any kind of budget process for the school district if elected? And Craig, I'm just going to start with you.
I think an important aspect of developing a budget is seeing what resources are available, what we're currently getting, and what we haven't accessed yet. Or more or better certain areas of the support. Or looking at the budget that always see that the value of the budget is just going to see it in ask questions. That's maybe quite a process. Just have to keep an eye on things.
John?
As a potentially new board member, I want to acknowledge that I would be coming into something that already has momentum, that already has, there's already a plan in place, and I would work to prioritize students and teachers through the initiatives that have been outlined in the strategic plan. And that work has already started. So I want to come in. Furthermore, I think that when boards consider annual budgets, that consideration has to include impacts on education programs as well as impacts on taxpayers. Those must continually be balanced. As I think Tim said earlier, it is a tightrope. And lastly, I think an important piece that often doesn't get touched on is that a good board ensures that the budget protects the future fiscal integrity of the district. And we must always be thinking about what is coming down the road, as well as how we can support the students.
It is always a fun one for me, we have a great administration. We have a business manager that just knocks it out of the park, just on budget. A lot of people don't understand how the budget for a school district works, but we got to set a budget by the end of June and submit it to the state. The state will tell us about how much money people are going to get. Then it was October when we actually count our students and find out, okay, this is how many students are going to pay us for it. Is that going to make us live within our budget? And then comes December, when the state can say, you know what, we're not giving you that much money, but we didn't restrict the budget. So, it's a work in progress that is just sometimes so convoluted that it's hard to do. So I think you really got to look at, are we getting a bang for our buck? Are we putting money in the right place for our students and their staff? Is there a place where we should spend in more time and more money? And even though it may not look right on the surface, but we talk to our staff and our administration, and they say, no, this is where we need more help. We got to look at that, and we got to be able to answer these questions to the community as well. If we're spending money on something that doesn't make a lot of sense, maybe we have to cut that. And things upset people sometimes because they may have liked something that was going on. One of the things that irritated me back in the year, a few years ago, was the school to farm program. Great program, love it. When they first brought it to our district, it'll never cost you a dime. If we're going to do this for you, it'll never cost you a dime. A few years later, they're wanting money. A few more years later, they're wanting more money. And that just takes away from our budget when those kind of things happen. And it's tough. It's really tough. But bang for our buck, I think that's the huge thing we got to keep in consideration.
Like Nick says, sometimes there's some surprises within that budget, coming down from the state. They sometimes pull that out of the hat, and they sometimes just chuck the hat in the dumpster. Biggest thing that's spent within the budget is salaries. And then the next thing is taking care of our physical plan. Those are two things that we really have to pay attention to. And they do have to take priority, because if we don't have decent facility and we don't have decent staff, it doesn't matter. Because we're not going to get a good education, we're not going to be having healthy and happy kids. And we have to be well aware, one of our biggest issues as an elected official is to be responsible with taxpayer money. So sometimes those budgetary issues get a little tight. Fortunately, in the last year in particular, our superintendents found some really significant grants that have helped put people into place. Some of our programs for our counselors, for dealing grants, for some of those other programs needed to have extra funding. Sure that any grant funded things are not something that is going to be perpetuated. Once those grants are run out, we're not going to have to pony up money out of our regular budget. That's actually kind of a big issue, especially in a lot of our constituents. I see us accepting grants. Again, it just comes back to being fiscally responsible with taxpayer money. And we have a great business manager, and we have a superintendent that has kept us on track so far.
So if elected, how much will each of you, or how much can each of you, how much time could you each dedicate to your positions? I guess, Tim, if you could take it away.
Well, you have to dedicate the time it takes. Today, we had a work session starting at 4 o'clock, and then still doing the school issues at 7:10. And sometimes school board meetings, fortunately, they haven't gone really late for the past 3 years, but we've had meetings in the past that we've gone past midnight on school board meetings when there have been contentious issues. And you also need to be able to put in the time to do your research, to read the board package, to talk to teachers, to talk to the administration, to talk to the constituents. So I don't think there's a number you can apply on the amount of time it takes. It takes whatever it takes.
Well said, Tim, it does. It takes whatever it takes. And it's not just a board meeting. You know, when the packet comes out, when it comes out, you gotta start looking at it, seeing what's in there. What you thought was in there and what you, oh, I found out something that wasn't in there. So now I gotta buckle down and find out what that issue is and be ready to talk about it at the board meeting. And other things, I think it's kind of important for board members to be visual at the school, be visual at sporting events, that, you know, whatever that may be going on here, you know, the awards thing in the spring, to see how many scholarships our students are getting so they can go on to higher education. I think it's really important to be visible. So Tim's exactly right. It takes whatever it takes. I'm willing to give my heart and soul into it again. I did for 8 years. I missed it for the last 2 years. And I'm willing to pour my heart and soul in again for another 4, maybe 8. Just to make sure that our school is the best it can be.
There's a running theme here. You'll understand that it takes the time that is needed. I can dedicate whatever is necessary to this. I've had a lot of volunteer opportunities in the past, and I know that there is always more that is needed than it looks like on paper. In the same way that there is always one more dirty dish, there will always be more that needs to be done. And I also understand that time needed might fluctuate through the year. We have school, we have summer, we have different issues that come up through the seasons. And thankfully, I have very good support at home to enable me to be able to attend and participate, not just school board meetings, but being present in the community and talking to the constituents so that I am able to really be the voice that is necessary in the board.
As far as how much time we can I bring my life. I actively seek out opportunities to mentor or coach or be the one that's sitting there being some just say something to that issue there. Talking to people. Kids, that's actually a lot of fun. That's been fun outside work. I work talking with the parents. Work with it's so always having these conversations and between conversations of oh, how's your weekend versus hey, let's go that the school is putting. That's
Greg. This next question is from one of you, the audience. And I think for this one, if we could, we'll just start with you, Tim, and kind of, switch things up a little bit and do it that way. So this question is, what do you think the role of the school board is in or about the current topic of censorship of books and of curriculums in school districts?
Well, it's curriculum. And that's through listening to our community, to listening to what's available from what's out there. Our curriculum has been put together. We have a new curriculum that's been presented to us. Censorship, that's such a non-starter. You know, reading is fundamentals, the old saying goes, and not having books available, no matter what the topic and subject is. There are some age-appropriate things, and there are some things that the community might agree with or disagree with. I'm not going to put our school district in a position to be considered as, you know, Nazis in our community. It's inappropriate. It's not education. It's not being open-minded. It's not being equal under the law, as our Constitution says. Like,
You know, when I think about curriculum and you know, the district recently changed curriculum, I think about, you know, everybody involved in making that decision and bringing information to the board for the board to have final say. And I take a lot of stock in what the faculty have to say, because, you know, if the faculty says they like this curriculum and they want to use this curriculum and this is why, and it makes a lot of sense. And then we have, you know, the public on the other side going, no, you guys are totally wrong. This is what we need to do. And the teachers don't like that. We got a real problem. Because now we have teachers that don't believe in the curriculum that they have to try to teach. And so, you know, it's a tightrope walk for sure. You know, we need everybody involved. And you know, with doing our due diligence and vetting whatever curriculum is out there for the board of five, I think we'll make the right decision. But we really have to take a lot of stock into what our teachers are wanting to teach and what makes most sense for them. You know, because they're going to get further down the road and they're going to do a better job in educating our kiddos if they are passionate about the curriculum that they're using versus the can't stand.
There are two issues in that question to kind of tease apart. One being curriculum and one being censorship. And when it comes to curriculum, there are many people who have studied, written, and taught the curriculum, who have the experience to know what is most effective in the classroom. I think helping the community understand in that two-way street that there are experts who have written that curriculum, who have approved that curriculum, and who have taught that curriculum. We have a reason for that. It's not an arbitrary reason. When it comes to the issue of censorship, I don't think that that's something that is a responsibility of the school or the board directly. I think that's an issue within all of to books that are available. That's something that, you know, we have a library. There are a lot of books that are not appropriate for all ages, and that's a conversation that has to happen within the family and at home. And as a school, we can help support our family's decision, but it is not our decision as a board to censor those things.
What is out there? That we can nurture. Teachers have the best. The best, and so I think it's that rest of this. Using it. As words out. What is the
certain curriculum that are popular. Um, the- teaching bikes, teaching bikes. I think my situation would be the same part. But on the side of censorship, that is not something that I think that's a responsibility for. That should be something that should be from the family. Street.
At this point, I think I'd just like to ask each of you what you intend your highlights, the major contributions that you'd like to achieve if elected. And if we could just start again with you, Tim. Great.
Is having kids that are well educated. Personally have as a goal to be in the school, except to be an active participant within my community to be the best coordinator that I can be, and so we can have the best school that we can have. And, it's not a matter of issues or personal goals. It's a matter of taking care of our kids. I mean, I don't have any kids in the district, yet I have over 300 kids. They're all my kids when it comes down to the school board issues. So that's my goal. What I want to see happen is I want to have our board, a curriculum, good budget to make sure that our kids get educated and in a safe environment to achieve that.
Dedication. That's my dedicated to this board to make sure that we do exactly what Tim has said, that we offer the best education that we can to our kids. Because at the end of the day, when those seniors have been in our school district, hopefully for 13 years, and they're walking across that stage to get their diploma, they can do what they want to do. They can go to higher education and go in the workforce, go in the military. Whatever they want to do, and they can do it well because we've given them the tools to do that. You know, I always have pushed for an increased level of expectation of our staff to the students, and increase our rigor with the students, challenge them. Let's challenge. Let's see what we can dig out of these kids and find out what they have deep inside of them, so that when they are away from us and out of our control, so to speak, then they're successful and they thrive in life. You look at some of our past students and they've been phenomenal. We've had kids that have done great things working in the workplace, and kids that have graduated high in the military academies, working for companies, making a lot of money and have a lot of influence. For a little town, that means a lot. When we see these kids at the end of the year that are getting ready to graduate, have been in our school system a long time, getting a lot of scholarships and getting a lot of their education paid for because we've done the right things, that feels really good. And, we're the education business. That's our business, is educating our kids and making sure they're ready for the real world when they get ready to go to work. And, we expect a high level from them. They will respond and they will give that in the community when they graduate.
Well, if elected, I first and foremost want to focus on continuing the really excellent progress that the current board and administration have already done on implementing the strategic plan that community and the board have worked to create. There's a really excellent vision for our school. And if you haven't looked at it, I strongly encourage you to do so. Additionally, I think that some of my priorities in my time on the board is to work towards creative solutions that remedy our lack of resources that we face as a rural school. As my friends and family know, I'm a very data-oriented person, like getting into the nitty-gritty. And I want to seek database solutions that ensure both the safety and the success of all of our students and staff, that also balances the community. with the needs of students.
Craig?
It's to as much as possible. But also I say, I should use that. The other thing we need to also be an advocate for students. And whatever avenues they wish to pursue as far as their education goes. Whatever services they may need to come back in, which they may have. Just being someone who represent the school district as best as possible in the community and brought that.
So at this point, I think I'd like to move on to just our candidate outros, our wrap ups. And I think it says here you'll have each 90 seconds for these. And starting with you, Craig, if that's all right. Yeah, just you can keep it as general as you'd like, or just whatever parting thoughts you have for us all about your candidacy. I think we'd all love to hear them.
Appreciated and enjoyed this evening. Getting to hear viewpoints from the other candidates. I walked into this thinking that there was no way that I could ever come across and say the school district needs to do that, they need to do that, and that's something because there isn't anything. The board is moving forward with some really great initiatives, and I want to support that. And, just being a parent, parents that sometimes the issues are not transmitted to the parent. Maybe because we're keeping it's true. My time will be time showing that it's what it unless it gives control. But change that showing up for the board. Parents say this is good. Just you know, just that's essentially
Education has been my life's work, and I'm really passionate about helping facilitate the next generation to become successful members of our society. I really hope that no students fall through the cracks like I did. And through my very path, I would bring valuable experience to this position and be able to give voice to a part of the community that I work closely with all the time. And I'd like to end with one of my personal favorite quotes that is near and dear to my heart that I often think of in my daily life. It's by Owen Jones, and it's that a society should be judged by how it treats its children. A country that fails to invest in its children is imperiling its future. So I set out to serve our community, both the present and the future. Thank you for coming tonight and hearing.
Blake.
What you do with me is what you've seen tonight. You know, and there's I just have a passion to serve on the board. And keeping moving the district in a better place. I know it's hard to improve on what's been done in the past, but I think it's a work in progress. And I want to be a part of that. And you know, it's a lot to get up here and talk about what you want to talk about in a limited amount of time, because there's so many things I would like to be able to say. So if anybody wanted to talk more about that afterwards or anytime you see me, I'd be more willing to do that. There's 3 slots available on this board, and a vote for me would be one of the right people, to be honest. Not that somebody else isn't, but you know, I feel like I bring a lot, and then and I'm a benefit to the board, and I'm asking for your vote. I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight and continued support of our school district.
That's what ask for the vote. I've been on the board on and off for a long time. I've had great joy in being on the board. We have, despite we'll disagree with, like, we have made a lot of improvements the past couple of years compared to when I started out on the board in 2030. Great strides, far program or strategic plan. It's just consolidating our board and our administration, involving the teachers. It's amazing that this machine that is our school district has become way more well-oiled and way more functional than it has been in the past years. You look around and you see the people who graduated and all this stuff and still doing this stuff. You look at our multi-tiered student support system. You look at our training things. We're doing well, and I would like to continue that because, like I said, we've made great strides and we have a great future here in the school district.
Excellent. I think at this point, I'm going to kind of wrap things up on my end. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and for participating in this just by being here. I think it says a lot about just being in this community that you're willing to give, you know, an hour and a half of your time to talk about the school board. So thank you for coming, and thank you to the candidates for being so eloquent and for telling us a bit about who you are as people. And I'd also like to thank Todd, obviously, and Katie for inviting me to do this. It's my first time, you know, moderating any kind of forum, debate, or anything else like that. So I'm just very pleased to be here and to, you know, share that experience with you folks. So thanks again. And I guess with that, I think that's just about it. So thank you for coming. And if you'd like to speak with any of these board members, these candidates, after, I think they'd be willing. So go ahead and introduce yourself and ask them whatever questions you'd like. And yeah, thank you again, everyone.